Welcome to Family Law A to Z with DBD.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Family Law A to Z with DBD, a podcast from the Pennsylvania-based firm Dishell Bartle Dooley. This series reflects the collective experience of the firm's family law team, including attorneys Mark Dishell, Elizabeth Billies, and Katie Lin Daly, who work closely together to provide a clear, practical guidance on the legal issues that impact your family and your future. I'm Sean O'Connor, and today we're talking about mental health and Pennsylvania custody cases, including how courts evaluate these issues and what parents should understand if mental health concerns become part of a custody dispute. Joining me for this conversation is attorney Katie Lin Daly. Katie focuses exclusively on family law and helps individuals and families navigate divorce, custody, and support matters with a steady client-centered approach. She's committed to helping people understand the process, make informed decisions, and move forward with clarity. Katie, it's great to have you on the show again.
Thanks for having me, Sean.
Katie, how do Pennsylvania courts evaluate mental health concerns in custody cases? It seems like it'd be hard to do.
It is. So when we're talking about custody, we're always going to be talking about the best interest of the child. And how mental health impacts the best interest of the child really depends on what type of mental health issue we're talking about. Are we talking about the mental health of one of the parents or both of the parents? Are we talking about maybe drug or alcohol use, which obviously impacts mental health on the part of the parents? Or are we talking about the child's mental health? So the court is always going to look at custody issues through the lens of what's best for the child. And that's true of any issue, including mental health.
Or the best interest of the child, a common phrase in family law. I'm wondering if one has a mental health diagnosis, does it automatically affect the parent's custody rights?
Not necessarily. So if we think about, mental illness and mental health as kind of a spectrum, if you have a parent who has, let's call it garden variety depression, and they're taking care of themselves, they're taking care of the child, the bills are getting paid, everything's getting done the way it needs to, that is probably not going to have a huge impact on custody. On the other end of the spectrum, if we have a parent who's maybe involuntarily committed to a mental health facility, or who's not taking care of themselves or not taking care of the child, the court is going to use that information to make a decision about custody of the child.
Sure.
It really depends on, how is this mental health issue impacting the ability to parent?
Are there other circumstances that, typically lead mental health issues, that the court looks at, like, other than those extreme? I mean, maybe it's not extreme. It seems extreme to me, but what have you seen in custody cases?
So mental health can come up in a custody case in a number of different ways. The first way that I'm thinking of is if a child has mental health concerns and one parent wants to get the child treatment and the other parent doesn't. That is going to be an issue that the court would consider. If parents have shared legal custody and they're making decisions together, is it appropriate to make an order that a child get mental health treatment? Perhaps based upon the best interest of the children. We also might have a situation in which one parent or both parents have been demonstrating symptoms of mental illness in a way that would impact the child, whether that's because they're not taking care of themselves, they're not taking care of the child, they're making risky decisions that could put the child at risk, they're perhaps being abusive as a result of their mental illness, things like that. That is where the court will step in.
Some of that, it would, I could understand how a court would make the decision, but, how typically does a court distinguish, between a sort of mental health issue that's manageable or being managed and a situation that is negatively affecting a child's well-being?
So the mental health of the parties is just one of the many custody factors the court will look at. And it's not always a make or break factor. If you have a situation where, maybe one parent has ADHD that's well managed on medication and the other parent has no diagnosed mental health conditions, that's not going to really make a difference in terms of custody. Whereas on the other end, if we have a parent who has a diagnosed substance use disorder and the other parent doesn't, that is likely to make an impact on custody. It's one factor. And when we talk about whether or not that moves the needle, it's really about the severity of the issue. The other thing that can be kind of confusing for litigants is maybe one parent had a mental health issue years ago.
Uh,
Maybe one parent had postpartum depression and did some inpatient treatment, and now the child's 10 and they've been okay for the past, 9.5, 10 years. Is that treatment going to impact them for the next, 8 years of the child's life? It's hard for me to say, based upon this imaginary scenario,
sure.
but what the court is looking at is at the present time, presently, what is the best interest of the child? It's usually going to be with, spending time with two parents who love them and are able to take care of them.
Yeah. Yeah. And the fact that someone dealt with postpartum depression or some other, I mean, and that it's been, it's in the past, basically, uh, probably wouldn't come to bear on the case. But I'm wondering, can a parent be required to participate in a custody evaluation, psychological evaluation, that sort of thing, if someone says, hey, they need their head examined?
So there's a couple different scenarios in which that could happen. The first would be that one parent says, my co-parent is bonkers and they need to be evaluated. That parent would file a petition with the court. The court could grant it, requiring that other parent to undergo a mental health evaluation. A mental health evaluation is not the same thing as a custody evaluation. The
Right.
mental health evaluation is going to look at that parent, maybe look at their history of treatment. If there has been any history of treatment, they might take information from collaterals about the mental health of that parent. The mental health evaluation is not necessarily going to talk to the children, and it is not necessarily going to make an opinion as to what a custody order should include.
I
The
see.
other end of that spectrum is a custody evaluation. In custody evaluations, both parents are evaluated. Oftentimes, the evaluator will do, mental health testing. They will speak with collaterals. They may speak with the children. And in a custody evaluation, a custody evaluator can make a recommendation as to what a custody schedule or order should look like. The kind of question that wasn't asked, but I'll throw in here, is the court can also require that a parent undergo a drug or alcohol test, which is, sort of similar, but the court can order that a parent go get a hair follicle test or go get a urine test, a breath test, a nail test to determine if that parent is using substances that might impact their custodial time. So a parent can request that the other parent be evaluated. The parents can agree that both parents would be evaluated. A parent can request a custody evaluation. The court can also sua sponte on its own say, it sounds like there might be mental health issues here in this case. I'm going to order that one or both parents be evaluated. So it can
Interesting.
be asked for by a parent, it can be ordered by the court, or it can be agreed upon by both parties.
Let's say that, I'm how should I respond? I'm a parent in a custody case, and the other side questions my mental health during a custody dispute, right? How should I respond?
So generally, there's 2 points at which you could respond. Let's say parent A is mom, and mom files a petition for a mental health evaluation of dad, and you're dad, and you say, I don't have these mental health issues. So, what dad would do is file an answer to that petition. He would say, these are the things that were alleged, and these are the things that are incorrect. Now, once the issue of mental health has been raised, sometimes, the hairs on the back of the court's neck get raised up and they're concerned, they're worried about everybody's safety and best interests. So they may end up ordering a mental health evaluation, even if the parents disagree as to the background facts. If
Interesting.
that's a situation that you find yourself in, my not legal advice would be participate,
Yeah,
go.
go
If
along.
you don't think that there's mental health issues, a mental health evaluator will show that.
Yeah, got it. Got it. Okay. And what happens when a child's mental health needs become an important factor in the custody decisions?
So there's a couple different ways that this could pop up. This could pop up in that, a child is diagnosed with a mental illness, is prescribed medication, and one parent is not giving them their medication. This could pop up with, you know, a parent thinks a child needs therapy, the other parent doesn't agree, so the child isn't in therapy. It could pop up in terms of, a child is in treatment And the recommended treatment might include a change in school or might include an activity that the parents don't agree upon. Generally, the child's mental health is something that is going to impact their best interest. And if one parent is providing treatment and is providing something that is good for the child's mental health, that is going to be a factor that the court is going to look at. And exactly on the other side of it, if a parent is standing in the way of a child getting mental health treatment, or is not allowing a child to take prescribed medication, or is saying to the child, you can't do this activity that is good for you, the court is going to look negatively upon that.
Yeah, although I would say good. It sounds like a it sounds like a good intervention for the child's well-being. This is your specialty. You're focused on this in your practice. What have you found that parents often misunderstand about how mental health factors into custody decisions?
So there's a couple of misunderstandings that, I try to be quick to correct. The first is that if you have one parent who has a diagnosed mental health condition and one parent who doesn't, generally the parent who doesn't thinks that they should have primary or sole custody just because the other parent has this mental health condition. And that's not always true. It really depends on the severity of the mental health condition and the ability of both people to co-parent. Just because someone has, generalized anxiety disorder, depression, ADHD, OCD, any of the kind of really common mental health conditions, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're not able to be a good parent to the child. Now, on the other hand, if you have someone who has a very severe mental health condition, somebody who has periods of institutionalization as a result of their mental health condition, that factor is going to weigh pretty heavily against that parent, just because it's really hard to parent a child while you're in a mental health institution.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I was thinking too that first of all, I feel just sort of generally in society, right? The discussion around mental health is much less taboo than it used to be, and I know a lot of people, of various ages that are like, oh, ADHD, or and they're taking various meds to manage it, and uh, so I would think the courts are obviously pretty familiar. Like, in some ways, like, okay, that's not a big deal. I mean, the nicest way, right? Like,
Yeah,
you can
absolutely.
still be a good dad.
Just because mom is on Prozac doesn't mean that mom shouldn't have custody. And in a
Yeah.
certain way,
In
if mom
fact,
has
mom
been on
should only
Prozac,
have custody. Mom should only have custody if she's on Prozac,
sometimes,
right?
and if mom is on Prozac and she is, taking medication as prescribed and she's doing well, that's not going to impact her at all. You
Yeah.
know, if you're not taking care of yourself, that is where it's going to come into play.
Right. Right. That's great. Uh, Katie, thanks. We're coming up on time here, but as always, great to see you and talk with you. Thanks for sharing your expertise and point of view with everyone.
Thanks, John.
That's it for today's episode of Family Law A to Z with DBD. If you'd like to learn more about Katie Lin Daly or the family law team at Dishelle Bartle Dooley, visit the website, dbdlaw.com. You'll find resources and information about Pennsylvania family law matters there, and you can get in touch with them quite easily. As always, thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to the show so you don't miss an episode. Maybe leave a review if you found this episode helpful, or even share a link to someone in your world who is dealing with some of these issues. That would be great for everyone. I'm Sean O'Connor. Enjoy the day.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.